Good morning. Today we're talking about a clinical scenario that deceives even experienced clinicians: severe asthma exacerbation. Not the everyday wheeze that responds to a couple of puffs and sends someone home. We're talking about the asthma attack that keeps escalating. The one where the patient sits bolt upright, fighting for each breath, and the usual toolkit starts to feel inadequate. And here's the central paradox we're going to explore today. In severe asthma, the sign that sounds like improvement can actually be the most dangerous sign of all.
Most of us associate asthma with noise, the characteristic wheeze, that high-pitched musical sound of air moving through narrowed airways is what we're trained to listen for. So it seems logical that when the wheeze disappears, things are getting better. They are not. A silent chest in the context of a severe asthma exacerbation is one of the most ominous findings in emergency medicine. It doesn't mean the airways have opened. It means airflow has become so dramatically reduced, either because obstruction is near total or because the patient is simply exhausted and can no longer move air at all, that there is nothing left to make sound. The wheeze is gone because the engine has nearly stopped.
Alongside this silence, look for the patient who can barely complete a sentence, speaking only one or two words before pausing to breathe. Look for someone whose mental status is shifting: drowsiness, confusion, a glassy detachment that tells you the brain isn't getting enough. Watch the chest. In severe obstruction, the thorax and abdomen may move in opposite directions, a sign called paradoxical thoraco-abdominal movement, the body's desperate attempt to force air through a system that is nearly seized. And if you see cyanosis, that blue-gray tinge to the lips and fingertips, or if the heart rate is falling rather than racing, you are looking at late-stage deterioration. Bradycardia in this context is not reassuring. It is a final warning.
There is another layer of deception in severe asthma, and it lives in the numbers. When someone is working hard to breathe, gasping, tachypneic, chest heaving, their body is blowing off carbon dioxide at a high rate. This is the normal physiological response. An arterial blood gas drawn early in an asthma attack will typically show a low PaCO2 and a high pH, a state of respiratory alkalosis, the body overventilating in response to the threat. But as the attack worsens and the airways become progressively more obstructed, something shifts. The patient is still breathing fast, you can see it and count it, but the actual movement of air in and out of the alveoli is declining. The effort is there, the result is not. Carbon dioxide, which should be falling, starts to normalize. And a normal PaCO2 in a tachypneic, struggling asthma patient is not reassuring. It is a red flag. Clinicians call this relative hypoventilation. Relative because against the backdrop of the patient's respiratory effort, the CO2 should still be low. That it isn't tells you the respiratory system is beginning to fail. If you allow this to continue unchecked, the third stage arrives. Carbon dioxide climbs above 45 millimeters of mercury, the pH drops below 7.35, and the patient has entered respiratory acidosis, a state strongly associated with poor outcomes and imminent respiratory arrest. At this point, the margin for intervention has narrowed dramatically.
The philosophy of managing a severe asthma exacerbation is aggressive early action across several fronts simultaneously. Oxygen comes first. The target is an oxygen saturation of at least 90% or above 95% if the patient is pregnant or has significant cardiac disease. In patients who are chronic carbon dioxide retainers, the goal is to avoid hyperoxia, titrating carefully rather than flooding the system. If hypoxia persists despite supplemental oxygen, it suggests the problem has moved beyond simple airway narrowing. Mucus plugging or atelectasis may be causing profound ventilation, perfusion mismatch, where blood is reaching areas of the lung that air cannot.
Bronchodilators follow immediately. Nebulized albuterol, a short-acting beta-2 agonist, is delivered in rapid succession every 20 minutes or as a continuous infusion in the most severe cases. Alongside it, ipratropium bromide, an anticholinergic, synergizes with albuterol to open the airways through a complementary mechanism, and its addition has been shown to reduce hospitalization rates. These two act together on different limbs of the same problem, the bronchospasm that is choking the airway from the inside.
Systemic corticosteroids, prednisone by mouth or methylprednisolone by vein, must be started early, not later, not once everything else has been tried. The reason, their effect, takes hours to fully manifest, beginning around 6 hours after administration. Every hour they are delayed is an hour. The inflammatory response inside the airway goes unchecked. At the same time, don't overcomplicate the course. If treatment runs fewer than 10 days, there is no demonstrated benefit to tapering the dose.
For patients who remain severely obstructed despite these measures, those with a peak expiratory flow below 40% of their predicted value, magnesium sulfate can be added intravenously. 2 grams over 20 minutes causes smooth muscle relaxation and serves as a meaningful adjunct when the standard pathway is insufficient. In some patients with refractory obstruction, Heliox, a mixture of helium and oxygen that is less dense than air, can improve the delivery of aerosolized medications into a system that has nearly closed off. And subcutaneous epinephrine, though rarely needed in the era of aggressive inhaled bronchodilation, remains an option when the patient is not responding and intubation is being considered.
There is a threshold in severe asthma beyond which the patient can no longer maintain their own airway, and crossing that threshold requires a decision that carries its own significant risks. Intubation in the setting of severe asthma exacerbation is not without danger. The same hyperinflated, obstructed lung that has been working against the patient continues to work against the ventilator. Air trapping, a phenomenon where air enters the lung faster than it can exit, can lead to dangerously elevated pressures inside the chest, a condition called dynamic hyperinflation or auto-PEEP, with potentially catastrophic consequences including pneumothorax and hemodynamic collapse.
The ventilator strategy, therefore, must account for the underlying physiology. Respiratory rates are set low, 10 to 14 breaths per minute, to allow adequate time for exhalation. Tidal volumes are kept small, and the clinician must accept something counterintuitive. The patient's carbon dioxide will rise and the pH will fall, and that is acceptable. Permissive hypercapnia, the deliberate choice to tolerate an elevated PaCO2 rather than push the ventilator harder and risk barotrauma, is the guiding principle. The priority is not a perfect blood gas. The priority is a patient who survives until the bronchospasm can be reversed.
Before closing, it's worth pausing on a humbling clinical reality. Not everything that sounds like severe asthma is severe asthma. Vocal cord dysfunction can produce dramatic stridor and apparent respiratory distress. Pneumothorax, trapped air in the pleural space, presents with unilateral absent breath sounds and a hyper-resonant percussion note, and can be catastrophically worsened if treated as asthma and given positive pressure ventilation without prior decompression. Cardiogenic pulmonary edema, foreign body aspiration, and pulmonary embolism can all, in varying presentations, wear the mask of a respiratory emergency. Clinical judgment, a careful physical examination, a chest X-ray, and point-of-care ultrasound help untangle these diagnoses. The lesson is not to second-guess every asthma presentation. It is to remain alert when the response to treatment is absent or the pattern doesn't quite fit.
Severe asthma teaches us to distrust surface appearances. Silence is not safety. A normal number on a blood gas is not reassurance. And time, once this emergency takes hold, is something you cannot buy back. The roadmap is clear. Oxygen, bronchodilators without hesitation, corticosteroids from the start, and adjuncts when needed. Recognize the blood gas trajectory before the numbers become critical. Know when the airway must be secured and how to ventilate a lung that is already in crisis. And keep the differential open, even when asthma seems certain.
Treat the patient in front of you. Treat them early. Treat them aggressively. That, in severe asthma, is what saves lives. Until next time.
And we will see you next time.